when you grow up, and maybe as a consequence of your temperament, you tend to think that some of your attributes are good and some of them are negative, you know. So you make moral judgments about them, and fair enough. So, you know, you might think, for the psychoanalysts, the two elements of human being that were commonly regarded as negative from a moral perspective were sexuality and aggression. But Jung's notion is that, well, you know, you might be someone who's modest and careful and never causes any conflict, and then we might say, well, you're a well-socialized person. But Jung's point would be, yeah, but you got no power. You've got no power. And so people are just going to roll right over you. So you better dive into that morass of sexuality and aggression and pull out those powers and integrate them into your psyche so that you can use them consciously, because without that, you're harmless. But, you know, I don't think that's a very good ambition. You know, what do you want to be when you're 30? Well, I want to be harmless. It's like, you know, really, that's what you want to be? It's like you might as well not even be if that's your goal. So, you know, this dichotomy between the positive individual and the negative individual is very, very complex, because what's positive and what's negative is not obvious from the beginning, and arbitrary judgments don't help. It's very difficult for a given individual to look at themselves and say, well, what is it about me that's actually worth developing? And I can tie this into some degree into Big Five theory. So one of the Big Five characteristics is agreeableness, eh? And people tend to think of agreeableness as a virtue, which is it's completely idiotic to think that, because every virtue has its vice. But agreeable people are sympathetic and empathetic and compassionate and polite, and those all sound like good things. But they're also part of being an Oedipal parent, by the way. But anyways, the problem with being agreeable is that people take advantage of you. And then you get resentful. So I'm sure there's a whole pile of you in here that are agreeable and resentful. You know, I'm sure you know who you are. And one of the things I would mention, and you should think about this because it'll help you a lot if you do it, is that resentment is your best friend. If something makes you resentful, do not do it. So, or there's a more sophisticated rule, which is, if something makes you resentful, there's only two possibilities. One is that you're sniveling and immature and you won't adopt your responsibilities and you're whining about it. The other is that you're being pushed around and people are attempting to enslave you. So, you want to eliminate the first possibility, right? You got to think, well, am I just being immature and whiny about this? Is it something that people are reasonably demanding of me? And if you think that through, and maybe you talk to some people about it, and you think, no, this isn't reasonable, then the resentment is telling you, act. Act. Because otherwise, that's what you'll be. You'll end up 15 years, especially if you're married or something like that, with 8,000 things you're resentful about, and then, you know, you'll be in some kind of painful divorce that lasts for 10 years. So, better to nip it in the bud. If someone is after you to do something, and you don't feel like you're getting proper regard or proper response, or you don't think it's fair, it's like, have some courage and get a hold of your anger and use it. Doesn't mean you're right, but at least it means you can push the person hard enough so they have to engage in a dialogue with you. And you know, these are necessary skills. Like, if you cannot do this, you have to be able to say no to negotiate. You have to be able to say no. So you always want to put yourself in a position where you can do that. That's part of power. And the other thing is, do not let people push you around, because you'll get pushed right into a corner and you'll end up as a slave. And that's because there's tyranny, slavery, or negotiation.